So crypto collectibles, or NFTs as they're commonly known, might seem like a new phenomenon, but people have been making and selling these things since at least 2014. What's different these days are the celebrities and brands that are involved, and the price. With many tokens selling for thousands of dollars and some even going for millions, it's an explosive combination of pop culture, fear of missing out, and just money. But what are people really buying? Lewis, I'd like to start with you. Ignoring the technology entirely, because frankly, it doesn't really matter for this question. When an artist like Beeple posts an animation to the internet that anyone can watch and then sells a token that represents that public, freely viewable animation for millions of dollars, what is the artist actually selling and what is the collector actually buying?
That's a great question. It's certainly not, the physical artwork, if there is one, or even the digital artwork, because those exist separately from the NFT. What you're getting fundamentally is a connection, an ability to say, I am connected to this artwork in a certain way, typically in a unique way, whether it's a one-of-one NFT or one of an NFT. There are a finite number of people who are connected to something else. So the NFT is really about what I call the reference. There's an artwork or something in the physical and tangible world, and your ability to say, hey, I have this relationship with you. And that's what you're buying. Whether you think that's valuable or not is up to you. And of course, whether you think other people will believe it to be valuable in the future, we'll see.
Preston, I've heard a lot of people talk about what these NFT collectible type things are. And I think the thing that has most resonated with me, and I think which builds upon what Lewis just said, is the idea that these are digital bragging rights. That it's not so much about the thing as about the ability to provably claim some type of association. Does that ring true to you as well? Or what do you think these things are?
I certainly think that's an element of it, in that you have something which is unique in a world. And crypto is kind of the software version of that, right? So if you have a version of Windows running on your machine and someone else has a version of Windows running on their machine, that's not a particularly scarce resource. You can run it as long as you have a verification code or an activation code from Microsoft. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is digital scarcity, right? The idea of blockchains and cryptocurrency is that we can create scarcity through cryptography. And so NFTs are just a specific iteration of that concept, but relating to a specific asset or a specific set of rights relating to a real world asset potentially on the internet on a blockchain database.
Okay, so now we kind of have some idea of what these things are, but when we're talking about the excitement that's around it, like I said, kind of in the open, I've been working with tokens since 2014, and Preston, I know you've been, playing with things like Marmot Coin and kind of experiments like that for a long time. So these are not new ideas, but the kind of types of companies that are involved, the types of brands, celebrities, creators. I took a look through the last couple of days on CoinDesk, and the Associated is selling an NFT from the 2020 election that's currently got a bid of more than $20,000 on it. The NBA has partnered with Dapper and just sold, $1 million worth of card packs where there are no actual cards. It's just, again, these kind of moments in time for more than $1 million. And every time they list these things, they just sell out instantly. Grimes, the artist who's also the beau of Elon Musk, put some stuff out there, right? Some kind of angel photos, and was able to basically triple her net worth just by releasing a couple of NFTs. And then of course Taco Bell released a charity set. So I mean, is this just kind of the cultural moment for NFTs, or is this, do you think, something that actually could last beyond these initial earned press opportunities?
That's me or Lewis?
Well, I'll throw it to you first.
So, I mean, I think it's a hint as to what's coming, but not necessarily the final iteration of what's coming, right? Baseball cards were a cultural phenomenon for decades, right? It was something which was very commonly known. It was common currency among younger people, and eventually when those younger people became older people. So I think what we're seeing with crypto now is I'm feeling kind of old, right? There are some Zoomers who are getting into this space now, and for them, crypto's always been around as long as they've been using the internet. For me, it really hasn't been, right? That was something which crypto only came into existence when I was finishing law school. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as these NFTs get used by new users who don't know anything else. And so they start using these for their own economic purposes, which we may not find particularly useful or helpful, but they might find very useful or helpful. So we're at the very beginning of the adoption curve rather than at the end.
Okay. Well, I mean, for people who are buying NFTs now, perhaps that is some measure of comfort that this is not the top. Lewis, why don't you jump in there? Any thoughts here?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'd agree, Preston. To me, NFTs represent a number of things that are really interesting. In addition to all the hype, one of them is sometimes overlooked is that they're a tremendous on ramp for the digital asset world. In order to buy, an NFT, you may be setting up a MetaMask. You may be doing a lot of things. You may be buying your first ETH or other crypto, and so we're onboarding a lot of folks into the digital asset world while we're selling them these NFTs, and I think that can't be overlooked. I think also we have to recognize, Adam, to your point of being at a moment in time. Right now, everybody's cooped up. We're at the hopefully end stages of the quarantine from the pandemic and all that, and everybody's looking for something to latch onto. You could almost say the way everything was right for Beatlemania in 1963 after Kennedy was assassinated. It's a moment when something catches fire in the wider populace, and I think that's very exciting. I think ultimately, though, people have to realize that what you're getting, and one of the points to make that people need to understand is that an NFT refers to something else digital, and that something else has to be stored somewhere on the internet. I've been in a lot of house rooms where people say, "Oh, it's going to live on the internet for free." Nothing lives on the internet for free and forever. You have to pay for that, persistence, and I think that point of this is often overlooked. So I think it's super exciting, a lot of experiments, and I absolutely encourage it. But I think we need to temper our enthusiasm as people kind of better understand technology.
Yeah, Lewis, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you, but I think the point that you made there about, like how the value that is seemingly implicit within a given NFT has a lot to do with sort of the information that isn't actually contained within the NFT, right? The NFT is sort of the token portion. Yeah, but to the extent that you're trying to capture value that isn't necessarily that, even if you're talking about online content, even if you're talking about, for example, the Beeple, animation that's about 10 seconds of animation, that has to be hosted somewhere, and it can't really be hosted on a blockchain because it's just too big to do that. Now, this is something we're going to talk about a little bit more in the second segment as we get into that, so let's table that for now. Where I want to go next with this for kind of the rest of this first segment is to talk about prices and kind of, are these things being priced in any sort of a reasonable way, or is this just kind of the signaling part of the thing? Because, again, like we've seen this in cryptocurrency before. I would argue that ICOs went through a period of this where before people understood the money that they could raise through ICOs, there was something of a risk. But as it became more obvious that more and more people were raising these large amounts of money, the risk goes down and it pulls in people who might not be interested in the technology alone. So, I mean, talk to me about that. What's the difference between something created by someone who's wildly famous versus something that's created by someone who's not, but is the same thing or maybe even better? I mean, is this just about fame? And how sustainable are prices if it is? And let's take you, Lewis, first on that one.
Sure, and I hope my sound is okay.
You're sounding better now. Yes.
Okay, terrific. So price is hugely important here. In many ways, it's what's driving the artist community to create more content. People are looking around and saying, "Wow," as you said, Adam, if Grimes can make all this money selling, angel images and whatnot, maybe I have real artwork that will raise money for me. And I think you can't disassociate the prices and in some cases the astronomical prices from the interest of this. At the same time, with collecting, they're looking at this as well and saying, the price is indicating a level of demand. What you observe, though, is absolutely spot on, which is very often price gets ahead of real interest, and people are effectively betting on future levels of interest through price signaling that doesn't, turn out right. And I think there will absolutely be, an adjustment in that over time. And I think we just have to get through this period where people are speculating, what is valuable. And we'll probably talk about selling tweets and things like that. It's hard to believe that market, 5 years from now, is going to attribute $20,000 to a pointer to a tweet that may or may not still be there.
Thanks for that, Lewis. Okay, so you get the final word in this segment, Preston. Give us 90 seconds or less on the same question.
Yeah, people are making some pretty stupid purchasing decisions. Purchasing a tweet is a really dumb thing to do if it doesn't come with a copyright license and the copyright isn't registered and you can't enforce it. if it's a particularly famous tweet, for example. So there's some really legally stupid structuring decisions that are being made. The other thing that I would caution people about, particularly with regard to pricing, is that sometimes we see really opaque transactions where large amounts of money are moving from A to B. I think there's a non-zero risk that the NFTs, like ICOs before them, maybe are capable of being used for illicit purposes, and in particular money laundering. And if you have a seemingly legitimate transaction where Alice is paying Bob $1 million and Bob is paying Alice some NFT, that may be a way to sort of mix up funds in a way that wouldn't be subject to regulatory oversight, or move them around in a way that not subject to the oversight. It's obviously subject to oversight, but it's in a way that might avoid regulatory scrutiny. So that's one thing. I'm very skeptical about the large purchases that I see for seemingly pointless assets.
So I mean, just to follow up on that for a second, you're saying that you're more concerned about money laundering than you are about signaling? Because I mean, when I think about the topic, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking, well, the value of some of these large purchases, like it's kind of like wash trading for exchanges, right? Like wash trading for exchanges makes it look like there's more activity happening, makes it look like, like it's a better opportunity. I kind of feel like some of this pricing stuff could fall into that same bucket too. But it seems like you're more concerned about the money laundering side. Is that right?
It's not a question of being more concerned. It's just a question of being required to hold both possibilities in superposition at the same time with regard to any particular transaction. So you got to, because crypto is so opaque and because there's no real means of peering behind a transaction that's on the blockchain to understand what happened without knowing significant personal information that won't be found on the chain. You have to look at these transactions with at least some degree of skepticism and say, okay, what could be at work here other than it may very well be a bona fide transaction by a very stupid purchaser. But again, there may be other issues at play too.